Hello, welcome to Speech Talk Live. This is episode number 52. My name is Jay Yoza. I'm the host of the show, and my co host is Julie Wu Finkelstein. I'm based out of New Jersey, and we do this show every week to basically talk about speech related topics. We have a discussion on it based on some of the things that we are experiencing or we find interesting that would be helpful to others, and also based on reading the forums on the Coursera course, Introduction to Public Speaking. Julie and I are both mentors for the Coursera's public speaking course. We've been doing this now. As you can see, this is the 52nd episode. And even prior to that, we've been supporting, mentoring students global, all over the world. One of the things that we do based on our availability is it's something that we just, if you notice it on the Coursera forum, I just posted a speech, and this was an interview with one of the student who was still taking the course. Her name is Catherine, and she had to give a high stakes speech at a marketing research association. And we coached her, and then we had her come on and give us an update on what she did as far as her preparation was concerned, what she experienced during the speech, and what she plans to do now that she has given the speech. So if you're in that situation where you have to give a high stakes speech and you want some coaching, let us know. And again, we can't promise you that we'll be able to do it, because again, we can only do very few of these because these are very time consuming, but it's something we make available to those who are taking their public speaking to that next level where they're getting in front of people, and you will need some coaching. So we are available to do that, but you got to give us a lead time. If you know you have a speech coming, typically you need close to 6 weeks. So we're just letting you know we're available to help you, because it can be very scary, and you really need to do a good job because it'll be recorded. It could change your life if you really take it seriously and do a great job. So we do the show basically for that. We're here to help. We're here to learn. And we are also here to improve. That's the idea. And lastly, we're here to support. So that's the purpose of this show. This is really the designed to really help the entire Coursera community, and even an extended community for people who are not currently taking the course, but who want to improve their public speaking. So today we have 3 segments. The first segment is something that we learned from talking to Catherine. And these are factors that you encounter that are during the speech, a high stakes speech when you're in front of 100 or so people. And these are things you don't have any control over that you do need to think about before you give a speech. That's why it's so important. So we'll talk about that. And this is important because a lot of people do a lot of work, and then they find out, oh my God, I didn't know this was going to happen. This was going to happen. And those things do happen. Okay. The second segment is Julie is going to, as we saw last week, she completed her 12 videos for the book that she's writing on stretches, 12 stretches to energize yourself to become healthy, happy, and wise. Now she's starting something new, and she's going to discuss this related to how to kind of find your identity and kind of brand it so that people immediately know who you are. You don't have to make them think. So Julie's going to talk about that, what her plans are moving forward with that. So I'm excited to hear about that. And she's recorded 2 companion videos that gives you an idea where she's going with this, okay? And then the third one is, again, a topic that keeps coming, that I keep going back to. It has to do with the selling concept when it comes to speaking. And this time I'm taking this concept that most of us pretty much are familiar with. If you had seen this movie, Glengarry Glen Ross, I mean, there's a YouTube video out there you should take a look at where the guy, I think, forgot the name of the actor, where he puts on the board all ABC. It's a sales concept. It means always be closing. But I don't think people quite understand what that means. So I want to have a discussion around that where I really explain what that means. People dismiss it as like, oh, that's old style sales. It's not old style. It's tried and tested and it works, but it has to be modified. I don't think that concept has ever been explained properly. I'm hoping we can do that with this discussion and the video that I've recorded. So that's the show for today. And for my insight, I'm going to talk about something that comes up a lot when somebody is on a podcast or any kind of show where somebody will ask them like, hey, what book do you recommend? You know, people who are successful read a lot. They have a very extensive reading list. And I was thinking about this actually when I went for my walk yesterday, that if somebody asked me that question, what book would I recommend? And I have like so many books. There isn't any one book that I could ever recommend, because reading is like you pick up things from one thing, another thing, and you kind of create a composite of what you are thinking about. There's no one book that does it. But if you have to pick a one book, the answer is, to me, is quite obvious. You have to pick the Bible. And the reason is not necessarily even religious. I'm not a Christian, but I would pick the Bible because Bible is the book that's most referenced. And there is a lot of useful stuff in the Bible. Like one day I started reading the Bible. I think I only got past the first chapter, Adam and Eve. I mean, that's as basic as it gets. And even then I saw like there's so much here. I don't think I could ever finish this book. So I would say that if you want to pick that one book that's going to, have the biggest payoff in your life, I would say the Bible. And then after that, then you can decide what other books out there are going to help you. But there is a lot in this one book, okay? And I haven't even gotten through the first chapter. One day, if I have time, I'd like to go through it and see how it applies to my daily life. Like I said, I'm not Christian, but I'm not going to read it as a, like faithfully. I'm going to read it critically on what it's teaching me. And I think for that, the book is highly valuable. And it's the book that I would pick as and if there's a second book out there, I would pick Plato's Republic. Those are the two books. If you cover those two books, you pretty much have covered 80 to 90% of everything you need to know. Anyway, that's my insight for the day. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Julie to introduce herself, and then we'll get started with our first segment. Julie?
Well, good morning, Jay. Thank you. And congratulations to you for your dedication and your commitment and to reach the 1-year milestone for this Speech Talk Live. I think it's a really significant milestone. So power to you. Power to you. Yeah, so let's see who I am. I think that's a really great question. So today I would like to say that, and I think I need to work on it, but in the talk there was some 3 questions. So what are my talents and my strengths? So I'm going to answer that, and what are my passions? And then something I like to talk about. So my talent, I think, is a lot of intuition, empathy, and creativity. My strength is lots and lots of business experience and systems experience in a wide perspective. I am really passionate about helping people be authentic and successful and happy. Because I think you cannot be happy without being successful or authentic. So my new project is about that. And what I love to do is to learn and to experiment and to collaborate. So I frequently come off like I don't know what I'm doing. And that's generally true because I'm always trying something I don't know. But in this work of identity, I would like to say, I'm unusual in that I carry with me a huge body of experience and work. As for insight for today, so please check out my site. I have some free activities that you can always plug into. I'm working on this concept called streaming, is providing services to people that is unconditional, that's always available, that is moment per moment, and you can give and receive. And that's a very and this so there's always going to be a free aspect of my activities with the group, with the people in large, but I also think that money is the main question. So today I want to actually, it's interesting that Jay is talking about a book. So today I want to bring 3 books into a kind of a perspective. One of them is, well, one of them is not a book. One of them is a webinar that Jay shared with me, which was Linda Formichelli's talk on how to do everything. She's a book publisher, and she's publishing a book, and she talks about life and book and all that interesting work. The next one is called, and I don't even remember these people's names, or there's Linda Formichelli. I actually do. The next book I like to talk about is a book called The 10% Entrepreneur, and that is by this guy called Patrick McGinnis, and he's a famous entrepreneur, made a lot of money, and there's a Google talk on him talking about the book, The 10% Entrepreneur. And the third one is by this guy called Stephen Case. I didn't recognize the name, and the title of his book is called The Third Way, An Entrepreneur's Vision of the Future. I pick up on the Toffler's book, The Third Way, which is a classic. So these books form like a common intersection, or the commonality is basically there is something inside you that can come out. You can do it. You can do it by yourself. You can do it on a part-time, and it's the idea of innovation and creativity to work on some major projects in your life, even when you don't have time. And the key to that is to get started. Okay, so one of it is in the 10% Entrepreneur, they talk about just putting aside some part-time and work on that. And in Linda's book, she talks about the side castle or the sand castle, where you're building little pieces. And in the 10% Entrepreneur, it really talks about you can do that part-time. So I don't think that it has to be about money, but I think there is something that's like a running theme in your life. And if you create a project or activity, the inside and the outside manifest together. And the key for that, I think, is a binder. If you have a binder and you start keeping information in there over decades, over years, you will be amazed what gets collected, because the binder serves as a bank. And I'll talk about more, but underlying this need for creativity in today's world is the information age is allowing us a very low entry point, in the sense that it doesn't take too much money, it doesn't take too much time, and you can get started. And the information is available now, the technology is available, you can do very little bit and start doing step by step. So I'll continue to investigate this theme. The next major project I'm doing, which is a piece of that major theme, is finding your identity, creating identity of the talents you already have, to message that, to create messages, and then to brand yourself with that, and then to keep practicing that, which is a 4-step process, either finding or creating your identity of your strengths and what your passions, creating messages, which I will use Jay's hacking techniques or some form of that. Messaging that is applying that in real life situations, job interviews, talking to your friends and family, making speeches, business meetings, networking events. And then the fourth one is just keep practicing, because the scope is so wide, you can only take a little drop of water, but it changes the color of the pool that you're in if you keep on dropping water in there. So that's my little speech today. So my insight. So I hope that's useful. Thank you, Jay. And thank you, everybody.
Yeah, yeah, that was good, Julie. Just want to comment on one thing. Yeah, that part that you said that sometimes you come across like you don't know what I'm doing, which I think is actually a positive because I'm actually reading a book. I forgot the name of it. It has to do with confidence, and it completely changed my perspective on confidence. It's written by a professor. I forgot his last name is kind of hard to pronounce. His an Argentinian last name, Thomas something Pirnik something Pirnik or something like that. I'll get you the name. And he has done a lot of research in this field. And what he says is that, like people in especially in America, where they always try to tell, oh, you got to be confident, you got to be confident. And what he's saying in the book is that no, if you have low confidence, that'll make you much more realistic, and you are going to take care of the situation rather than being overconfident and be delusional. So I think what you just said, it's a strength that you don't know what you're doing, in a sense that you're willing to listen to others and you're also willing to learn. If you already knew what you're doing, then you'd say, what can Jay teach me? What can I learn from somebody else? So that is your strength, by the way, if you think like that. Like, I don't know what I'm doing, which is a good way to approach things, because you don't. I mean, there's just so much out there that other people know that you just don't know. And I think that's how Socrates used to think, right? Like, I can learn from anybody. So you're like Lady Socrates there.
Thanks, Jay.
Okay, so at this point, we can go on talking about this. We'll talk about this more when we get to your segment. So at this point, let me take a brief pause and we'll move to our first segment. Okay, welcome back to Speech Talk Live. This is episode number 52. My name is Jay Oza. I'm the host of the show, and my co-host is Julie Wu Finkelstein. In this first segment, we're going to talk about something that typically people that are professionals know about, which is that there are certain aspects of speaking, there may be more than 4, that are really outside your control. When you are trying to become a good or confident or whatever word you want to use, a speaker, where you're going to get in front of a large audience, let's say more than 100, and you're going to give a speech, you're just focused on the speech, and you just want to get it done, and then that's it, right? You're not thinking that far ahead. And one of the things that what I talk about in this companion video is that there are other things you have to think about, because your success of your speech is not necessarily going to be all that prep work you did. Audience, they don't care about the prep work. They only care about what you're doing at that particular moment. It's very moment specific, not based on like you as far as your preparation, that's yours, right? You have to perform when you're in front of the audience. So there are 4 things that a lot of times we just don't think about that can completely affect how your speech is perceived by the audience. First is, of course, the audience. You really need to know about them. And you remember, if you're at an event, the audience is there now for quite some time. What do they really know, and what do they want to know? And the tendency always is that when you are expert in a topic, you want to go in and just impress the hell out of them with how much you know. And that's a mistake you don't want to make. So always remember that you want to give them maybe one thing, and that's it. Don't give them more than one. If you want to give them another thing, then you can use my the hedge ox principle and go with the 60-30-10 principle. But I would just say that if you can give them one thing that they can take away, then you have achieved your objective. And then if they're interested, they can come back to you. So you really have to look at the audience and what they're going through, not in their life, but at that event. And a lot of times we just don't do that. We just think like, oh, they're going to be so impressed with listening to your speech. And in reality is that they don't even care. They're not going to remember much anyway, especially if there are lots of other speakers that are speaking and if they've been there that event for 1 or 2 days. So the audience is important, and the key thing that I'll tell you here is don't err on giving too many details. Details are not important. Give them like one thing that they can take away from your speech. The second one is the time aspect of it. And here's something that we just recently saw with one of the person that we were coaching. She had a 45-minute time, and she was not able to finish the speech, and they had to stop her at the time. And what you want to do in any speech you give is to give people time back. Nobody's ever going to get angry and say, oh man, Julie gave us 5 minutes, she finished 5 minutes early. Believe me, nobody's ever going to scream at you for doing that. And that means that when you're practicing your speech, you really want to come in. So let's say it's a 45-minute speech. Your speech should be so tight that you can end it at 35 minutes when you're practicing. Because most likely when you're actually when you're giving the speech, you're going to run over anyway. So let's say you run over by 5, you're still going to finish at 40-minute mark, and you're giving them 5 minutes. You're going to give them 5 minutes back. They're going to be happy. You never, ever you always want to try to get your speech done at least 5 to 7 minutes early. And then if there are questions, you take them. Otherwise, you're done. Because you gave them only one point. That's what that's the takeaway that you want to give them. So you don't have to feel bad like, oh, I have to use up every single minute. You don't. Our audience doesn't really care. In fact, they'll be happy. The other thing always is a trap is like entertainment versus content. That's a spectrum, right? If you go to an event and if it's a stand-up comedian, it's all going to be on the entertainment side because that's what you're going for. And if you're going to a specific workshop on a specific aspect of a topic on, let's say, if I was giving a talk on speaking, storytelling to techies, computer or something very specific, at that point, the people that are going to be there are going to be people who know exactly what they're going to get attending that workshop, let's say. So that's on the right end of the spectrum where the topic is very specific and very detailed, okay? But most of the time you're in between. And here you have to be very careful depending on so many factors, the audience, the venue, what time you're giving. And you have to calibrate it. Do you want to go, so let's say using the football terminology, 50-yard line, put you right in the middle, partly entertainment, partly content driven, right? If the audience is at a particular, let's say if it's late in the day, then you want it to be more entertainment. If it's early in the morning, you probably want it to be a little bit more content heavy since you're the first speaker and the audience can probably have not been, your brain has not been fried yet with listening to a lot of different speeches. So you got to be able to know all that, and you got to be able to do it quickly. Sometimes you do know ahead of time when you're speaking, but sometimes things can happen where a previous speaker has gone over, and now you have to suddenly make these decisions on the fly, and you have to be prepared. Otherwise, you're going to be affected. Your speech is going to be affected. And the last thing I'll just mention is the venue. This is very important. If you're just one speaker out of many, your speech is just essentially a filler speech. An audience is basically getting a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, and that's what you want to give them. Just a little bit of what the audience is there to get. They're not there to just come to listen to your speech alone. If that's what they're there for, then they will come to your workshop. Okay, so you have to keep that in mind, that they're not there just to listen to your speech. Unless you're giving a keynote, then it's a different matter altogether. But even then, I don't think people go there to listen to just one speech. That might draw them in. At the end, the point is add value. Add value. based on things that are unforeseen that can happen when you're giving a speech. This is a little bit of an advanced topic because a lot of times we talk about the preparation side, but these are the things you also have to prepare for what can happen at when you are actually giving a speech at an event, things that you have not thought about that could adversely affect your speech. Julie, you have any comments on this? And how would you handle it?
Yeah, Jay. So, yeah, you mentioned audience. I think it's really key that what they know already and what they want to know. I think that drives our audience participation, and that's like empathy, right? And I think that in today's videos that you'll be commenting, I really didn't think about that. So I think that is so important. And I think you used the term avatar, and we said maybe it's more archetype. Is perhaps you can create, perhaps before we give a speech or even a business strategy, is that we need to start thinking about who is our consumer archetype. And there may not be one when we started, but I think what you're giving us is like a good checklist of things to think about. And then again, if you have that binder, you could have a section, and each of these ideas could be at one page, so people can start jogging ideas on it. In terms of how much time, yeah, as I was working with the person, and I am actually exploring that myself a lot, is unbundling and rebundling, or packaging or repackaging. I think it's a great idea to give them one message, but maybe in the one message there's like 3 or 4 blocks, and so then you want to be able to plug and play the blocks. So for example, if there's 3 messages, you can tune in and say, oh, I'm taking so much time with the first message, the 60%, I might drop off the last message. So to design a speech so that there's flexibility on where to drop off a piece, modularity in designing the speech, I think it's really helpful for help people to maintain the time, because as a beginning speaker, it's very hard to judge the time. So I agree that you can't control it, but I think there's a way for you to be adaptable and respond to that. Effective style, again, I like to be the devil's advocate and say, instead of looking at it as a single line and you have entertainment and information as like one single dimension, what if you put it in like an X and Y, like a dimension? Where would you locate yourself? So is there a possibility for someone to be 100% entertaining and 100% content rich? Or do they really just need to be 50-50? Where are they and what's their style, and work with that. But it's very true. I was a founder of the Midwest SQL Users Group, which is, the relational database that's still currently the main technology. And I don't think I knew that. It would have been much more helpful for me had I known this information. And location, again, like you said, I'm personally taking the idea of doing online stuff. But the physical location and face-to-face is a very important factor in any human relationship. So knowing what the location is and how hot and cold it is, how if it's a spa environment, then people are not really there to be educated. They might want to take some creative ideas, but it's more of a relationship and stuff like that. So I think those 4 ideas are great, and maybe you're going to put together a worksheet for us. Thank you very much. That's it.
Yeah, Julie, thanks a lot. That was an excellent message there on what some of the things that you said. Yeah, the whole point of this is that there may be more here that I haven't included. So I think you're right. I'll add a checklist on these are the things. But I think the main point here is this, that we don't allocate time when we're working on our speech for these things. We either we have to know ahead of time, and again, I understand that many of us are not professionals who go and give a lot of speeches. So these are things that we don't think about. Even in at companies, you have to go and give a speech. You're so focused on the speech itself that you don't think about going there ahead of time, getting comfortable with the room, uh, exactly where you're going to move, how you're going to move it, what kind of technology you're going to deal with it. Because you run into situations where people have all kinds of issues with, I don't know, that's if you're using PowerPoint, but if you're using PowerPoint, you need to know how you're going to pull it off. And all of these things have to be rehearsed so that I think there's a point here that I didn't make in my video, which I'll make now. And it's something I think you say. I think you said in the last week's video, that Speech Talk Live that we did. When you are in front of an audience, the audience doesn't really get to know they know the content or what you're saying through you. Part of your job is to look like you're under control with how you move, how you deal with the situation, how you use your voice, how you use your gestures. Because if you don't look like you're under control, then your content is either look like is too difficult for them to understand, or they dismiss it outright, saying, oh, this person is not making us comfortable. And that is the key thing, what I'm trying to tell in this these factors, that if you don't think of these factors, then what is likely to happen is that you're not going to make the audience comfortable. And if they're not comfortable, they just will not pay attention to you, and they will not think of you as a thought leader because you're not giving them that comfort. And that comfort has nothing to do necessarily with your content. It's how you present yourself, as far as are you attuned to the venue? Are you attuned to the entertainment versus content richness? These are the time. Are you ending the speech early? These are all the things that the audience do pick up, and you've got to be prepared to handle that. Anyway, any closing thoughts on this, Julie, regarding the comfort, being comfortable?
Yeah, I think yeah, comfortable is a more operating word for me than control, but certainly be comfortable, be responsive, which is what you talk about a lot in some previous talks, is to connect with the audience. Part of your control is not to be rigidly controlled, but to be comfortable and responsive and flexible. So I think those 4 key points are great. I look forward to more insight from you on them. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Julie. Yeah, and you're right. There's a lot we can discuss, but at least I got it started. That these are some of the things that we do have to think about when we are giving a speech. Because I think up to this point, we have focused a lot on getting the speech done. But now we're moving on to the next phase, as this is our 52nd episode, where people are, in order for, we've seen some examples where people have actually gone in front of an audience, and we have to convey to them that you better allocate a week so that when you're on that stage, you're under control, you're comfortable, because that's how that content is being perceived by them. All right, Julie, thanks a lot. At this point, I'll take a brief pause and we'll move to our second segment. Okay, welcome back to Speech Talk Live, episode number 52nd. My name is Jay Oza. I'm the host of the show, and my co-host is Julie Vu Finkelstein. In this second segment, Julie is going to talk about a series of videos that she's going to be recording, as she just completed her 12 video series on 12 stretches to energize yourself, to make you happy, healthy, and mindful. And here she's going to focus on, assuming you already did those 12 stretches, now it's time to, or integrate it as part of your practice. Now it's more about, who are you? Like, how do people perceive you? But how do you want people to perceive you? So she's going to go into kind of find yourself, what your identity is, so that you can brand yourself. So when people see you, you want to make sure they're seeing you the way you want them to see you. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Julie, where she talks. She's recorded two companion videos for this, and she will start talking about some of the practices that she's currently doing that can help us. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Julie to talk more about her pivot and what she's going to be doing for the next several weeks, and discuss some of the two of the videos that she has recorded. Julie, why don't you take it over?
Thanks, Jay. So just first off, I'd like to say I'm going to keep this relatively short so you can give me plenty of time for feedback. I am going to restart this whole series again next week. So what I'd like to get feedback from you is anything you like. But in terms of as an online speech, I did record them multiple times. But as you can see, I was not comfortable. There were many ums and ahs and disconnects in the videos. And that is because I'm still playing with the idea as well as the message. And I'm actually using the speech as a part of my refinement tool for my strategy and my message, as well as the tool for you to give me feedback on the message itself, on the public speaking aspects of it. In terms of public speaking, I really like the format that we came up with, which is 5 minutes for the idea, a video on 5 minutes for an idea, and then 5 minutes. Before it was demo, but now I'm going to call it practice or demo. So some of these things are not demonstratable, but we can talk about a practice. So given that this is a weekly show, people can take this idea and literally practice for 7 days, and they may find it very, very useful. The basic theme, as I mentioned, is looking for, this is a pivot between the 12, I like what you said, 12 stretches, 12 energy stretches for health and happiness, something like that. It's talk about building a physical foundation of well-being, because if you're not healthy, you ain't going anywhere. But there are certain practices that is useful no matter what you want to do in life. You know, you can call them meta practices, practices for practices, but they're kind of like the underlying fabric of everything. So in this pivot, I'm trying to identify those practices, and they were written in the first draft of the book. I'm thinking about pulling them out and creating a separate book, because they are like modules, you know, part of the modular design. And so, yeah, and then the 5-minute practice session, I just came up with the idea that perhaps it could be a half an hour workshop video I can do where there's a 5 minutes of practice, let people do it, and then somehow bring some kind of closure into it, either through schedule or through email response. So playing with that. So I'm open to totally for your feedback, since I'll have a complete redo next week.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I like what you're doing here, because I think it's very practical, and it dovetails nicely to what you did the 12 weeks, because I think the message here is that first you got to be, like you just said, you got to be healthy, you got to feel good. Otherwise, if you don't have something to relieve stress, then it could, stress is always there. There's a good stress and a bad stress. But if you don't have exercises to relieve stress or to manage stress, then this is going to overwhelm you to the point where you're not going to be productive and unhappy. So I like the way that this is following once you went over those 12 stretches, so that you can go back to that and feel good about yourself. You're healthy, happy. Now you're healthy, happy. Now that once you're happy, now it's time to do things that'll make you successful in something because you're already happy, rather than the other way around. Like, I think there's a lot of research that backs that up. One of the things that I think you mentioned in your video, I like the way you talk about your passion. What is important to you. What are your strengths? Kind of do an inventory of what your strengths are, what your experiences, a talent. I think one thing I would add to that, what's your interest? Because something has to really, I don't know, maybe that's passion, maybe that's why.
Yeah, that's passion.
Passion, right? Because your interest is very important. Like, what are you interested in? Something that you think about all the time. This is what I'm really interested in, and it could be that So I like that. That's good. And then the part that I didn't quite understand, which I'd like you to elaborate further on, is okay. Two things. One is you're saying that you have to create a binder, right? Now that's fine, but the question I have is, somebody who nowadays everybody is very much into using their smartphones, or unless there's a specific reason why you want people to use a binder, something that they can actually physically have to write it, so it's coming right from their brain, or is the binder concept key to this, or can this be done using some app, let's say some app that's out there that'll allow one to do this? The second question is, it's the last one when you say, when you go through for the third step, when you talk about whether spiritual, health, philosophy, etc., and then you say something practical. I don't know. I didn't get that. What? Give me I need an example of what does that mean?
Oh.
And how is this tying to what you are? Because I think you kind of gave us an idea of this is what you should do, but what aspect of this you're doing personally that as an example, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, thanks, Jay.
We need to see that, like like your strength. I think you kind of mentioned it in the intro here about your IT background, etc. But I think we need to see how this relates to you, because this is all about a method that's working for you, and I need to see how it's working for you, so I can use it for myself and maybe tweak it and make it work for me. Does that make sense?
Yes, thanks, Jay. Yeah, so the categories, I probably have way too much information in both of the videos. So one of the things I need to do is unpack it and parse it. So one of the ways for us to kind of move forward in our lives in a balanced way is figure out the categories. So Stephen Covey in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People have a different set of categories than I have. And so what I really should do is saying how to have a holistic life is find your categories. And the categories that I have were my own personal categories. And practical is something I'm weak on because my husband tends to be very, very talented and resourceful, and so I've let that atrophy. So one of the things I do to be more practically engaged in daily life is I have a reading action partner in reading, and we read current events because it helps me to figure out more practical things. I do a daily timesheet. Those are things, there's nothing poetic about it, but it keeps me grounded into everyday life. That's what practical meant for me. So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, right. So, another question I had there had to do with this whole binder concept that
yes.
you introduced. Does it have to be a binder, or is there a reason? Because one thing I didn't understand was that are you kind of like saying that this only will work well with the binder? Is that what you are seeing? And are there apps out there that will allow me to do it? Because some people may not be, for them, binder means a lot of work. Like I got to keep a binder, whereas apps, they can use it anywhere. So with the binder, they got to take it with them. And sometimes that creates its own problems. So I just wanted you to explain that.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. I have both. Actually, I have a three-tier system. I have an online folder, right, of all these categories or some relationship to these categories, and then I have a binder, and I also have a folder, with the expandable files. So I think it's really good to have at least an online function and a physical binder. And the online function is great because, like you said, we do so much online now. The physical binder is very important because, we all know about neuromuscular physiological impact of doing something. There's a kinesthetics to it. And also, you may be collecting scraps of paper. So a binder is a great organizer. So I have binders, but I tossed away many of them. But I have binders for the last 20 years. So there's certain things that you just, unless, I guess you can take a picture and scan it and keep it all online. I imagine some people do that. But there's some aspect of the process that just requires, like when you're doing brain maps, right? You can do it online, but there's something physically useful to do it on paper. So I guess for people who are foreign to the idea of hard copy, they could do it on paper and take a scan and put it in there. I don't know. Personally, I have both, and so.
You're right. No, that's good. So one thing I will, if I take this as one thing I would add, this would be something that I was telling my son. It's some concept I picked up from, I think his name is Tim Ferriss. He has written several books, and he's a real productivity guy. He looks at how things are making him more productive and improve at things. And one of the things he mentioned, I think one of the podcasts I might have been listening to, and it's something that he was saying that his ex-girlfriend, gave it to him as like a present, and it was a jar, and it said a jar of awesomeness. And what it meant was that every day there's something that you're doing that you need to capture, because occasionally you'll hit a valley where you're kind of stuck, and this will give you an opportunity to go back. Like, let's say you're writing. Every day something you write that you think, wow, today I came up with this great thought, like what you're doing here with this this concept right here on finding and branding yourself. By recording that video, that's pretty awesome, because you did something that a lot of people out there just don't do. They write it down, put it in a jar. But in this case, it could be another binder category where you can just put every day, like today I accomplished this, I read this book. Now, it may not sound like a lot, but sometimes when you're like completely stuck, you can go back to that and look at it and saying, wait a second, wow, I did accomplish a lot when I look at all the stuff that I have done. And that adds up to a lot, that you're successful. So it's like capturing your small wins and rather than just dismissing it, saying like, it's no big deal. Well, it may not be a big deal when you're doing it because you're thinking of, it's only big deal if I read the book and give a speech on it. That's a big deal. But if you just read a book and come up with some topics that you turn it into a speech, that's a big deal. That's a good small win that you want to keep track of. So that's something that I would add, and it's something that I'm going to give my sons a band that they can put there, because they're going to have a band camp in August, so that people can put in with the index card every time they do something well. Anyway, it's a thought that I had that I thought would be something.
That's great. Maybe you and I can do a discussion panel, just you and me, on that topic.
Yeah, we can record that.
Let's do that. Let that be our first interview.
Yeah, right. Because I have to start working on that. I don't have the chart here, but it's something that because every day okay. So here's the thing: when we finish the show, we don't put that as an awesome thing we did today, but we should because that is awesome. That
Yes.
you gave up, you prepared for this, I prepared for this. Now we came together and we put this show together. Now other people can benefit from it. In my opinion, this is a small win that you and I both are part of. That we should say, and we have these 52 shows that we have done. That's a 52 awesome things that we have done together, and that can't just be dismissed and said, "Oh, it's nothing." It is a lot of things, okay? Because when you do 52, that adds up to one big BFD, I guess, BFT or something. Okay, so at this point, let's close this out. Any closing thoughts on it? But I think this is going to be a continuation that we're going to be talking about, right?
That's great. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so let me just take a brief pause. Otherwise, we could talk about this forever, but we are going to at a later date. At this point, we're going to take a pause and move to our third segment. Okay, welcome back to Speech Talk Live. This is episode number 52nd. My name is Jay Oza. I'm the host of the show, and my co-host is Julie Wu Finkelstein. In this third segment, we're going to talk about this thing when you're giving a speech, selling versus telling, right? It sounds simple, but we often forget. There's a selling part and then there's a telling part. And when you're giving a speech, think selling, not telling, okay? And this is really a difficult concept. I think I included too many things in this companion video. So I'm just going to briefly kind of explain it, because sometimes after you record the companion video, you get some feedback and you realize that there are things that you understood it, the other people didn't, and it was maybe not clear. So the first concept I used in there was something called ABC, and ABC is a sales concept that stands for always be closing. Now, many people, when they hear about that, they think of that, oh, that's an old way of selling. That's from that Glenn Ross movie, where they put on the board, always be closing, and AIDA, right? AIDA, these are all sales concepts, but they've been tried and tested. Everything we do is that, okay? People don't like it. Now, what they don't like is, let's say you went to buy a car. What they don't like about this ABC is that the person is trying to get you to purchase a car. They want you to leave that showroom. They don't want you to leave till you've actually purchased the car. That's not what I mean by ABC here, okay? That's what gives ABC a bad name. In every interaction, whatever it is, whether it's a networking interaction, social, whatever, you are always trying to close something. So the example I give is, let's say, hypothetical example, you're at A and the endpoint is Z. Your immediate close is not Z, it should be B, because you can't get to Z unless you go through A, B, C, D, all the way up to Z. The final close should be the second last, should be when you're at Y. When you're at Y, then the final close is the Z. Now, this is kind of a trivial example I'm using. Of course, you're not going to have 26 steps like that. But if it's that many steps, you have to realize what is the next realistic close that you have, okay? So if you're at a networking event, let's say I meet Julie, my immediate close, I have to go in. What is my close here? My close is not to get her to come in saying, hey, Julie, I can coach you for your next speech. That, I think, is really makes me look like I'm kind of sleazy, okay? That's not the close you want. What I want is like an incremental close, saying, hey, Julie, I got a couple of videos that I'm going to send you to take a look at, see what you think. And that is doable. That's not too burdensome. So I'm kind of building a relationship. It's like a small close. It's like kind of you walking up the ladder. But the fact is that you have to close something. Otherwise, you're just telling, right? Because if you're not selling, then you're telling. Selling has a close. Telling doesn't, because you don't care. So whenever you're giving a speech, think of yourself as there has to be a particular close that you want in that speech that's realistic and that's doable. And when you're telling, that brings up another concept that has to do with the frame. Now, frame is how you see the world based on your experiences, your knowledge, uh, your talent, whatever, your education. That's the frame. We all have our frames. And one of the things that happens is that when you're selling, your frame isn't important, even though it's hard. This is what makes selling so difficult. It's the audience's frame. So if you have a large audience, then you have to look at the collective frame. How do they see the world? And you have to enter that frame and see how far you can move them. Not all the way to where you want to get them. How can you move them a little bit? And that's all realistically you can achieve. You can't. What happens in many cases is that you don't know what the audience frame is. You only care about your frame. At that point, you're telling people. And that just usually hardly ever works. So that's the concept between, there are several concepts that are kind of mixed in here. ABC, selling versus telling, but they're all kind of related in a way. The whole purpose of this is that when you're giving a speech, you want to close something. What is the close that you want to realistically you think you can achieve? And that's what you want to focus on. So that's why I use the word ABC, because when I was thinking about it, I said, this concept has never been explained properly to people. And it always makes people look like that if you're trying to sell, you have to be somewhat sleazy. And I said, that's not really the point, because if you're not selling, then what's the other alternative? That means you're telling. And telling is just as bad as, it's even worse than selling. Selling isn't bad as long as it's incremental. You're not trying to get them to get to the end point saying, hey, unless you buy my product, I don't want to have anything to do with you. Then you are sleazy. Then it's very transactional. And that's not what I'm talking about here. Julie, do you have what's your take on this concept between selling versus telling and ABC?
Yeah, Jay. Yeah, it's a great idea. Actually, in the book, the 10% entrepreneur, they always talk about you want to bring up money as soon as possible. You don't want to leave it to the end. So it's parallel in the concept, in this idea that you want to be incremental. And when you close, there's going to be talk about money. So yesterday, I had a business meeting and I brought up money. So I said, if we do make money, it has to be a revenue sharing. And she said, of course. But in the past, I would never bring it up. So that was your talk. I walked your talk, and it was very nice. Thank you.
Yeah, I think money is definitely important. But I also would be, depending, I don't know the context of if this came up on the first meeting or this was after several meetings, because I think money is not something, I know this is, I'm kind of torn on this. Sometimes should I bring it up? Should I not bring it up on the first meeting or not? I think you should not go into specific about money. So I'll give you an example. For example, I'm going to have a talk with somebody soon regarding for my book. And one thing I realized something, which is like, what do I want, right? Because when you're talking to somebody, you got to know what you really want. And the one thing I was thinking about is the financial terms. And I came up with something interesting, which I never gave much thought to. And it's something I learned from talking to this other consultant, Nancy, is that you never really want to get sucked into an hourly rate. You want to be, price has to be based on the project with a deliverable. Because I really don't care how many hours you spend on something. If you're not efficient at what you do, that's not my job to know about it. Like, oh, it's going to take you 3 hours to read it. I want the price. If you can't give me a price on based on project, then I'm not interested. I don't want to know like, oh, this is going to take me 5 hours. Don't mention your hours. Hours is something you control. I just want to know about the deliverable that I get for the money. If it means that it's going to be very expensive, then tell me right up front that this is going to cost you $500 or $600 or $1,000. And at that point, I have to decide whether I want to work with you, whether I see any value in you, right? So I've decided that in any future people that I work with, I will never pay per hour. As soon as they bring up hourly rate, I'm not going to pursue that, because that's not something I should worry about. I just need to know what that person can get my project done and what the deliverable is. So anyway, uh, I think selling is a very important concept in everything we do, whether it's a one-on-one interaction or whether it's a business interaction. And you got to think about, again, this ties into what we talked about in our first segment, things that are outside your control. And you do need to think about the how are you conducting the business. And that also shows you how much you're under control. Julie, any closing thoughts?
I think this is a very interesting discussion again. So I look forward for you making a video so we can continue the discussion.
All right, great, Julie. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
I think at this point we're pretty much done. Anything that you want to bring up on the earlier segments that that you didn't get a chance, that now suddenly you thought about, that you want to kind of discuss before we close the show out?
No, great show. Thanks, Jay.
Okay, Julie, thanks a lot. Let me thank you for participating on the show. And at this point, let me just tell people that public speaking is hard. As you can see, there are a lot of things you have to think about, but you do have to think about these things, because one speech can make a difference in your life, your career, relationship. So you got to keep on working on this. And what we try to do in the show is to bring up these things so that you can see that these are very important topics. But one thing is certain: speaking is something that you control. And that's what we're trying to bring out on this Speech Talk Live, that these are things that you can practice. You have a video camera, you know exactly what you look like, you know exactly what you sound like, you know exactly how comfortable you are when you're giving a speech. And the more you do it, the better you're going to become. I mean, it's this concept of confidence and competence. You can't just fool your way into being confident. You got to know what you're doing, and that's through practice. And that's something that Julie is going to be going into in more detail. So at this point, I'd like to close this show out. And this was a big milestone. We reached our 52nd episode. And one of the things we had discussed is next week we're going to do an assessment on where we are with this Speech Talk Live. But one thing we did prove as we are closing this show out, that we were consistent. We've been doing this now for an entire year. And I want to thank Julie for all her help, because it wouldn't have been the same with just myself doing it, talking to you. And little by little, we are adding value to people as the feedback that we get. And and whether people out there watch it or not, it doesn't matter. As long as it's helping me, it's helping Julie. That's all we care about. And if the rest other people, it's helping them, great. We want to hear from you. Okay, at this point, that's a wrap, and we'll see you for the next show, the 53rd episode.
Take
all right, Julie.
Okay,
take 5. Yeah, take 5. Okay.
Take 5. Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay. So let's talk about your book.
Yeah.
I didn't put the stuff I wanted on the agenda, so let's just, the JJ agenda. Let's just follow the agenda, and I'll put my stuff in there. That way, I can respect your process and
Okay, so let's see.
pick up
So the
that.
first thing you want me to go over my book.
Yeah, let's go through your book because that's
Okay.
you sent me an email about the title, right?
Yeah. Title, I think I'm pretty much set with now. I can't change it because what it does is that, okay, so first we'll talk about my book and the title.
Yeah.
Second,
Let's spend about 10 minutes on that. How's that?
yeah, right, 10 minutes. I'll just give you a quick update.
Yeah.
Then the second thing you want to talk about your next, your project.
What's on the JJ agenda? Did you see that?
No, I didn't see that. I can take a, I can
Let
go
me
to.
let me pick a look because
Let's pick three things to talk about. Otherwise we'll have too much to talk about.
yeah, good idea. Let's see what's on the
So the
JJ
book,
agenda.
and we're talking about Speech Talk Live next week, right? Okay.
Oh yeah, let's do that. Your book and your book, the Speech Talk Live next week.
No, Speech Talk, like I can kind of like just discuss some of the things I want to go over next week. Right now, I haven't thought much about it, but at least it'll give you something to think about.
Yes, Speech Talk Live for next week.
Some of the things I'm thinking of at this point, I haven't really developed it, but I just don't want to just tell you. Rather, I want you to be kind of participating.
Okay, great. And then let's talk about the two interview processes.
Okay.
Wherever it's at, the Speech Talk Live, how you envision it, and then mine. I'm going to call it strategic messaging, strategic branding. I'm not sure what it's going to call it, strategic branding or just strategic identity or something. I have to figure out. Maybe you have some ideas there. Okay, let's just talk about your book.
Right.
The Speech Talk Live next week and the interviews. Okay.
Okay. So sure. So with the book, I have the title now. The reason I picked this title is that I think it makes sense, and it's not a very sexy title, but it works.
What's the title?
Become a confident speaker.
Okay.
And I can get a domain on that name. So that was also part of the decision.
Okay.
And okay, so let me explain why I came up with that title. I was thinking about it, and I think partly some of it had to do with some of the feedback that I received from you, where you were kind of saying that whole concept of good to great was kind of nebulous. Like, what does that mean? And then obviously when you say it, I'm not thinking about it. I think about it after we're done. So I thought about it over the weekend, and I said, Julie's right. Good to great is it's kind of confusing, because if I have to explain it to people, that means it's already confusing. So I said, what am I exactly trying to do with this book? And I said, what I'm trying to do, what can somebody really control? What they can control is their confidence. But it's more than that, right? Confidence is also a vague word. But I can't necessarily overpromise and tell somebody that they're going to become a good speaker, great speaker, or an inspirational speaker. That's for the audience to judge. I don't have a system or anything that'll make them that, okay? What I can do is I can teach them some of the practices so they become more competent, and because they're competent, they can feel confident because they've done practices. They know exactly what they have to go through. So when they're getting in front of an audience, it's not like, they're deer in a headlight. Like, they'll know exactly what they're doing. There are certain situations that are like, it's an 80-20 rule. 80% of it they'll already know. 20% is just something they're going to experience. They're going to learn from their own experience. And what I'm trying to do is get them to that 80%. That's the confidence that I can give them. The other 20% is going to come through them doing it in front of an audience. And as far as whether they're good or great or inspirational, that's up to the audience to determine. I can't tell them that you're going to become a good speaker or a great speaker. I have no control of how much they're going to practice. So I thought this title, Become a Confident Speaker, made more sense. So that's how I came up with it. As far as where the book is, as I told you that I sent a draft to Coursera and I haven't gotten anything back from them. Because of that, and also I've kind of restructuring the book. I took out all that section on part 3 and 4. Those are all out. And the focus in the first book is just going to be on the practice to develop skills. So the first book is going to be just skills development. I'm not going to focus on the speech at all. I might have one chapter that will give them some basics on speech, but it's not going to focus on the speech because that's outside the scope of this book. And also, I want to be careful on not going into that because I need more examples like Catherine before I can focus on the speech, and I don't have them yet. I only have one, and Marius, but Marius was just on the messaging part. So I need to go through some more examples where I feel comfortable that I'm ready to now write about how to prepare for a speech. So I'm going to kind of defer that, and the first book is just going to be on the skills development.
Okay. So
Okay.
this is what I heard. Let me mirror back to you some of it. You decide to become a confident speaker because you thought about it a lot and you can't control the outcome. So, but you can give them the tools to become one. You mentioned the 80-20, and then also you said that you can get the domain name. You sent the book to Coursera. You're restructuring it to look at more of the practice piece. Is that right?
Skills development is what the first book will be about.
Skills development, yeah.
Not on public speaking skills development, not on the speech. I'll have a short chapter on the speech if somebody wants to, but eventually the real meat of the speech is going to be a separate book altogether. And this again ties into what you had told me earlier, that I have too many books in here and I need to start thinking about breaking it into separate books. So I'm coming back to your original suggestion that you made. That
you don't have to give me credit. Just take your decisions. Thank you.
Oh, no, but it's something you have to think about, right? When you talk to other people, you have to think about and saying that, and a lot of times what happens is that when you say something, my frame is different than your frame, and that's where
I understand.
That's where. Okay, so that's basically where I am right now.
So
I actually had to cancel. I had an appointment. I had a call with some woman consultant that I found. I have to have an initial call with her.
Okay.
And some of the things that I learned from my experience with Nancy, I want to make sure I don't repeat it.
Okay, so two things. Do you mind if I give you two suggestions?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, one is, they're really big on two-level titles, so maybe you want to add a second piece. And
that second piece is there. I just didn't. This is the main title.
Oh, okay. So
the second title, I think, is still there. Step-by-step method or something like that.
Oh, okay. That's great.
Okay.
And then, the short chapter on the speech, I think that's great idea if it's not too much work.
No.
Because it will kind of get people excited about your next book.
And I think I have to have that. I was thinking, because if I've gone into skills development and then somebody says, okay, but now I have a speech, where do I go now? And I'm just saying that right now, I don't want to give them too much, because again, a lot of the people who are developing the speech are probably trying to get that first speech done. So I'm going to keep it simple. That's what that chapter will be.
Yeah, just some overview even.
Yeah, like what we did with, it's going to pretty much follow what we did with Catherine.
Okay, okay, that sounds good. Okay, you said you gotta go, right?
No. STL.
Oh, I thought you said you had to cancel the meeting.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Sorry, no. I didn't. No, I had to cancel the call I had with a consultant.
Oh, you canceled the call with another consultant.
Yeah, because the thing is that I realized some of the things I did wrong with that consultant, Nancy, and I don't want to repeat that again. And I think the mistake I made was, I think I had all the indications that she was not going to meet my objective. What I was trying to do with her was, I want to get my book done. Her objective was more on the marketing side. And it turned out that I just never was able to get her to say, and it's not my job, but I just realized that I made a mistake. I should have been very specific that if you cannot give me what I want, then I can't work with you. But
Oh, okay.
I
I
kind of
got
let
it.
her, kind of let her drive her agenda on me, which was not the right way to do it because I knew specifically what I wanted. And then when she couldn't do it, I should have ended it right there, and I didn't. So
Okay.
it was a $200 lesson that I learned. But
Cheap.
yeah, very cheap. But here's a key thing, Julie. This I'll tell you right now. Before you ever, 2 points I'm going to make right now. Okay. If you ever talk to a consultant where you're going to pay them money,
Yes.
you got to write down what exactly do you want from that interaction
Mm-hmm.
and what is the deliverable you're going to get from that. Okay. And the third thing is, this is something that I kind of briefly mentioned on the show, never pay per hour. Always
Yeah,
pay per.
see, I have my own experience is it's you have to think about that. I have to think about that.
Oh no, this is just what
So
I'm saying because I don't like. Let's say if I'm asking you to coach me, I don't want to pay per hour. I need to pay per whatever the deliverable you're gonna. So you got to really tighten the deliverable. It's got to be deliverable based payment, not based on, because I don't really care how many hours. If you're good at your job, then you got to figure that out, how many hours it takes. But I don't need to know how many hours you're spending on it. Just give me the price, and then I'll decide whether that's what I want, whether that's going to give me the value. And as far as like, this is what I charge, $200 per hour and all that. And I just realized that just, for me, it doesn't work anymore.
yeah.
I have to be very much project driven.
Okay, try it out. Let me know. I'm sure I hear in your speech. Okay, let's go to interview this next week. So you mentioned next recap, but you want to kind of
Yeah,
brainstorm on that.
kind of tee it up right now, kind of start to introduce it. So I think the Speech Talk Live is going to have two, but not like two separate components. One is just the regular ones that we're having, just the discussion,
Mm-hmm.
whatever we're learning, whatever things that we're teaching. So we're using Speech Talk Live as a way to teach, the students. The other one is the interview, and my interview that I'm focusing on. So I have a very specific focus here, right?
Mm-hmm.
The interview that I want to do on the Speech Talk Live are specific to somebody giving a speech in front of an audience for the first time. Okay, this is not meant for because I'm not doing a show on professional speakers, because
I won't
that's
say the first time. I think that's too limiting. I would say somebody giving a speech in public.
public. But the problem is that the first time is where you're going to really know what you did. If you're going to give it again and again, then there are a lot of things you're just going to completely skip, which is not going to be helpful to somebody who's giving it for the first time.
But again, okay, I'm going to say this, and then it's your call. I'll keep talking until you say you made a decision.
Oh no, I'm not making any decision. That's how I'm thinking.
Okay.
I'm just this is like just introducing it because I'm trying to see what can add more value to people, because the amount of hours that you spend for the first one, and then you have to learn from it, and then you can, based on that, like for example, let's take Catherine for example. Catherine gave that speech for the first time. The amount what she learned in the first one is going to help her for the second one. Now, if she gives that speech the second time and we have her come on, let's say if she's giving that same speech for a number of times and then we have her come on, then what she's going to tell you is going to be completely different than what she's going to tell you after giving that speech for the first time. Did you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how that helps somebody out there who's just hasn't even given that first speech and what it's like going through that experience. That's what I was trying to.
Well, there's two ways to learn. Sometimes you learn, like if I'm a beginning piano student, I don't only learn from the person who's taking the first piano lesson or doing the first piano. I also learn from masters. So I think as an interview, if you stay on the theme, you will develop, first of all, a richer body of work,
Oh, okay. Right. So that's the kind of feedback I wanted. So I think what you're saying is that there's a value in talking to somebody like Catherine, who we coached, giving a first speech, but then there's also value in talking to somebody who's already giving a lot of speeches.
And someone in the middle too, because it's a different perspective.
Oh, okay, all right. So, but we have to make it clear. You're saying we have to make it clear where they are on the spectrum. Are they professional speakers?
Yes, I think that's a really good question, because like someone may be like my friend Suzanne. She has given her first public speech. Okay. She's given her first public speech at Toastmasters, and this was not Catherine's first public speech, because if you look even on YouTube, there's a recording of her earlier speech by her.
Right, but I say first speech this was the first. Anyway, yeah, you're right. You're right.
So,
it seems like
beginnings, experienced speecher, people who've done lots of speech, will have words of wisdom too. Like I studied with a Zen master who's a Zen master for the 40 years, but that doesn't mean that I don't learn from someone who's sitting, the ass is next to me in the cushion. I learn from people who are before. Right. So I think you want to have a richer perspective, richer body of work.
Let me. Yeah, I think you raise a good point, and that's something I wasn't thinking about. But now that this is part of the reason why I wanted to bring it up, so let me think about this. And I think you're right. There are 3 speeches here, 3 different types of interviews, or we have to modify it based on the person. The person could be somebody we coached, like Catherine. Okay, that's one type. Second one is somebody who is giving speeches but are not getting paid for it, but still they're giving lots of speeches. And then the third category are people who are actually getting paid to give speeches.
Yeah, I think if you profile the speaker in the beginning according to those, and then have a good checklist of questions like, where are you in your public speaking journey? How do you prepare pre-game? When you give your speech, what you're experiencing? What's your post-mortem? What do you do afterwards? And then what advice you have for our audience? I think if you do that, you can still focus on public speaking,
Right, and I think the questions would differ a little bit based on where they are in their journey.
Well, not the baseline questions that I just framed. I took from you. But the details within may be different. So it's always the same framework.
Right. Because I'm saying if somebody's a professional and who's basically, because remember, if you're a professional means you're giving that same speech over and over again. That's why you're being invited to give a speech, because you have established your credibility in one particular area. Like in your case, it could be branding, it could be exercising. So the important thing, and again, I don't want to get into detail at this point. We'll talk about it.
I think the important thing is to have a good framework. And I think the questions that you started with, which is pre-game, game, and post-game.
Yeah.
And then after 2 more questions. The first one is where you at the journey. Where are you in the public speaking journey? Something like that. So they can say, well, I'm a professional speaker, I'm a beginning, or I haven't gotten started. And then questions and suggestions. So beginning speakers may have questions, and then we can answer, or they could have suggestions or words of wisdom. I think those are the 5 baseline questions.
Right. Okay. Sounds good. Those are, and of course,
I mean, you can add or change them, but I think that's a good place for us to start.
Like the questions that you should send it to person ahead of time so that they know how to prepare. And then, of course, one thing can generate more questions based on how they.
And then, if talking to someone, you may want to add questions to it. Yeah. And I would definitely appreciate
the framework is there, that the pre-game, game, and post-game, and then based on that, because there has to be some dynamic aspect to interview, right? That the person comes with some kind of a game, or if I may use the word "quote unquote" game, for the show, and then based on how that person answers certain things, we can follow up. So the follow up you can't prepare for. That's part of the interview. All right, sounds good.
Okay.
So now you want to talk about the strategic branding. So why don't you kind of?
My piece of the interview is, yeah. So basically, it's basically on this whole idea of identity and messaging that somewhere in that spectrum. So I want to invite people on the interview who, again, like the beginning or probably even more advanced people, whoever wants to talk to me about identity and messaging.
Right. So before you do that, so let me ask you this. So what are you trying to? Okay. So what are you trying to achieve with this? Like who's the people that you're trying to? Maybe that may not be a fair question. So like, what's your objective of this? Like, you want to try to find out how to develop your identity, or you want to find out how somebody developed their identity? Like the people that you're interviewing, why would you have them on your show? And then because there's a person who's coming on your show that you're going to ask questions to help the people that are going to be watching or listening to your show. And what do you want them to get out of that?
Right. So the audience will learn different people doing different aspects of creating their own brand.
Oh, okay. So give me an example. So let's say you
have like my friend Mickey, right?
Yeah.
He is a musician, and I think he's a little off, but sometimes, like what you were saying, the feedback, you can't turn them in the way you think they ought to go, because
that's them. Yeah.
That's them, right? But anyway, so he's a musician. He's creating the CD, okay? His real identity is music. Music is the universal language of the soul, okay? So music is good for healing, good for spirituality, and good for living a happy, joyful life. But maybe I'm not understanding it. The next LP he's creating is called Homesick Mick. Okay, so he's going to be the CD is coming along. He's hired a professional manager and PR person to work with him, and the PR person is telling him that he'll be doing TV interviews and radio interviews. Okay, so what I want to work with him is to create an identity who is Mickey, right? But also basically who is Mickey. So Mickey plays this kind of soulful music. Mickey is a global musician, and this I didn't make it up. I heard him, and Mickey wants to cross generations and cross genres. So even though he's playing Americana, he wants to move into pop and soul. Okay, so those are the things he wants to do, but I haven't heard how he put these messages into a context of an interview, like a radio interview, or his publicity music. There's no consistency in the way he's branding himself. So what I want to do is interview him on the show and just find out what he's doing.
Yeah.
And then maybe slowly groom different people where they're at. Like Suzanne is a woman, she knows very clear what she's doing, but she doesn't have a message about that. But she's very effective intuitively because she goes on network meetings. So but she doesn't have it like in the back of her head. It kind of come across willy-nilly.
Right. Let me suggest something that I think we did with Catherine, which may help you. Because remember, I think one of the things is that you want to look at that person, Mickey's frame or Suzanne's frame, not your frame, right?
Yeah, I do that.
You're just there to help them bring out what their frame is.
Well, I'm not just a mirror. I'm also a pool of resources.
Right. But
so again, I do that. That's actually my very strong talent. Is I can hear what people are saying, and then bring resource into it so that they can have a bigger message, a more comprehensive message.
Right. No, I understand. but one of
So
the
what's the danger? I didn't want to, I just want to give you that information, but clearly you felt there was something you needed to
Yeah,
give
yeah,
me
yeah.
info on.
And again, it could be because you're right now are in a different mode talking to
Right, I'm
me than
talking to
talking to,
you,
yeah.
right? So I'm
Oh,
giving you my
right, but
opinion.
yeah, but I just want to make sure, because what happens sometimes is that the approach, when because this concept you're working with is really hard when it comes to trying for people to understand what their brand is, because I just kind of went through that, and a lot of times it scares people, like brand, like what I don't
Yeah,
know.
I don't use the word brand.
Yeah, yeah, I
You
just
know.
think I think what I would do is the following, and this is the part
Well,
that
but that's interesting because I've been playing with branding because those are the books and
brand
articles I'm
confuses me,
doing.
because that lady started asking me, what is my brand, what is my brand? And a lot of times that's not the right way. I would ask people, what is your brand? Because that means that you're somehow like Coca-Cola, like, like this guy Sergio Zeman. They got tons of money, resources to think about. A lot of people like myself don't even know what my brand is, and it's incremental. It takes. Here's what I would do, and this is what you can say. Don't I would not say let's figure out what the brand is. Okay, let's figure out. Forget the word brand. Let's not. Okay, forget I even use the word. I would just ask this simple question, saying, Mickey, you meet me at a networking event, and your job is to get me excited on what you do. And
But
let
Jerry, you're going into really detailed stuff.
no,
I'm
no, no,
just
because
trying to
that is
see.
the isn't that what he has to do when he's going, like,
Yeah,
is
but you're saying how I'm running an interview. I'm just giving you the theme of the meeting.
right, 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 right. No, I
Like,
was just, I was just, what I was trying to point out is that branding. I'm just giving you some of the things that I've experienced on this. That when somebody tries to, because one of the things you're trying to do is trying to help people find out who they are and what their brand is, right?
right. Well,
And
actually, I'm trying to find out their identity. And out of their identity, I'm trying to play with the word identity and brand. You know,
and I'm just saying
I'm
that
not
those two.
comfortable with either
And I
word
said
right
those two
now.
words may be confusing to people because they don't think of themselves as what my identity is. Because those two words, what I'm trying
What
to do is,
word would you use?
I wouldn't use any of those words. I would just let them talk about what gets them excited about what they do, and that you can.
But a book has a title. The show, when I put it online, I have to give it a name. I
But
mean,
right
your
now,
book has to have a
right. But
title.
right now, are they at that stage yet? If they're at that stage, then they already know what it is, right? And if they already know what
No,
it is,
I'm helping them to develop that.
right? Like, so if I was trying to develop, if you came to me and said, Jay, I'd say, Julie, tell me what gets you excited about this particular thing that you're doing, and I'll listen to you and saying, okay, let me see. There are key words that are coming up here,
But
and then
but
I'll,
Jay, but
huh?
Jay, for me to tell you that, I have to know why I'm telling you. So this, I agree
Well,
with you. That's part of the process once we get into it. But I
right.
have to somehow get you into this process. It's a chicken and the egg thing.
What I'm trying to do is it's like a role playing, right? That if you are at an event and somebody as like I want to meet people who have something to that they have some interest that gets me excited, that or they're excited about, right? And if you're excited about what you do, you don't have to go into detail, like, what, because when you say branding means that you already have captured it, so now you can tell them exactly what gets you excited. And in the case of Mickey, you're saying he's kind of all over the map. What I'm saying is that you got to get him to focus and say, what is that one thing that really gets you excited? What is that one thing that you can, if you have to say, out of all the things that you do, you got experiences, you got this, tell me one thing. I don't have a lot of time. I only have like a less than a minute. Get me that one thing that pretty much tells me what gets you so excited about what you do. And they should be able to tell you that, right? And if not, keep working with them till they get it down to that 30 seconds or 1 minute. What is that one thing that, if out of all the things, what's the one thing that you put at the top of your list?
Okay, I'll think
Because
about it.
yeah, I think this, what I'm trying to tell you is this, and this is why we're kind of going back and forth, that this is hard, trying to figure out what you really do. And I keep working. The reason I'm telling you this is because I keep working on this, and it's hard even after I work on it for so much. Like, what exactly am I trying to do? And how can I explain it to people? Because people out there are not going to think like, like if Mickey's in an interview, he has to know what he does that's making a difference, right? He has to stand for something. That person may not agree, but if you stand for something, then that's what you stand for. Then it's their job now to understand, why do you stand for that? What is it why does that get you so excited? That's what I was trying to, anyway. Like, for example, if you're teaching what you're teaching, I want to know, why are you teaching that? What gets you so excited? Like, is this something that out of all the things you could teach IT, you could teach this. Why are you teaching this particular topic? Why is this so important to you?
Right. So this is what I'm feeling, is I'm trying to get over that and look at the process, and you're looking one step in the process. So I'm getting a frame. You talk about frame. The frame you're giving me is like, these are the questions I have to ask these people. Like, this is how I can go about getting people to do that. And I'm trying to tell you, this is what I'm trying to do.
Oh, okay. So you're doing that, right? Well, what I'm trying, I understand. What I'm trying to tell you, this is hard. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Okay, I know that. And I may fail, right? I may fail.
Well, it's not better of fail.
But that's okay.
It's
right.
It's an incremental process. That's what I'm trying to tell you. This is not something where, because I think part of it is this, and I think you already gotten to that point. You have established trust. That trust is very important, because now that you have established trust, that person is willing to share. It's like what Catherine was talking about. He's not going to be able to tell you. It's going to have to come from some kind of metaphors that he uses to describe what he does.
Well, that's what I'm good at, is to get to mirror. I'm able to. Okay.
Right.
Okay. I know what you're saying. You're saying that this is hard. Okay, let me just mirror back what you're saying. You're telling me that this thing I'm trying to do, this is what I'm getting from you. You're having some concerns that something, I hear your concern. And because of this concern that you have, you're trying to tell me how to do it. And the underlying message is you're trying to tell me, because you're feeling this is really hard. So you're feeling like maybe I can't do it. And so you're saying this might be one way to do it. That's the message and the sequence I'm getting.
It sounds like it, because I think what I heard was that there was some frustration there, that with Mickey, he seems to be at a lot of different.
No, I'm not frustrated with Mickey. With Mickey, I was trying to share with you that people don't always know where they're going. And part of my job is to, like what you were saying, is give feedback, not review. So it's to understand what he said and then help him to facilitate that message.
Yeah, right. It's not even feedback. It's also to kind of challenge him, because another trap. We're just having a kind of a brainstorming session.
Yeah, I gotta wrap up in 5 minutes.
This is not meant as a critique on your method or anything. This is more like a brainstorming session, because part of it is this is also, I'm trying to help myself in the process too. That one of the things is that I'm thinking, what is more effective? And one of the things I think is that you don't want to tell what somebody should do. You should try to get them to tell you. But then I'm realizing there's a trap in that too, because people are themselves not that good at doing that. So the question then becomes is something that I kind of picked up from Catherine on what she talks about, is let them talk in the metaphor that describes what they do. And that
metaphor is just one technique. There's mirroring, there's questioning, there is sensory experiences.
Right.
There's just, metaphor is just like one tool in that field of techniques to do that.
Yeah, so you have all these different, and at the same time, you don't want to come across like the reason I'm saying this is so hard is that you're kind of in between a therapist and somebody who's trying to help them kind of figure out what their branding is. And that's why like focus groups, people tell you this is what we like, this is what we like, and they find out that's not that effective. Whereas metaphor kind of is in between the therapy. See, therapy, you go deep into somebody's past and childhood and all of that, right?
Right.
Why they do what they do, right? Like right now, we had this incident with this guy in Orlando who killed so many people. Right now, if you look at all the news coverage, they're going into his past. Like, okay, when did he change that? What did he do here? What did he do there? And he never had a therapy session, so nobody knows. Now we have to guess, right? It's too late now.
Yeah.
So anyway,
but it's not just therapy. There's philosophy, there's religion, there's spirituality, there's
so you see how complex this gets all of a sudden.
So yeah, I'm just saying we can't get fixated that it's therapy or it's philosophy or spirituality. It's just being with that person.
Yeah, right. Oh, anyway, the point the point that
I'm not hearing your point. Okay.
The point that I was making, this is hard. We've been talking about this for almost like 15 minutes, and I think we concluded that this is hard. What you're trying to do is hard, and that's why I realized that as not only as helping people, but also being helped by other people. That when people want to be helped, it's very hard until you get them into that right. I think what you're doing is the right way. You have established the trust, so they're giving you more information so that you can help them. Unless they're giving you information, you cannot help them. And I think you're at a point where what you're telling me is that I have all that information, and now rather than just telling them, I'm able to let them say to themselves on what they really are.
Well, I think that maybe I'm not making the interview. Maybe what's happening is, for me, is there's an overlapping of context, situational context. So when I'm working with you as a coach in working you on that, it is very different than if I'm going to interview you about what you know. And I think this is very important, and I didn't think of it until now, is when I do an interview, I'm not doing a demo. So I need to interview people in a different way. And I think what you picked up that's frustrating you is that you're concerned that I may not succeed in an interview because of the way I'm doing it.
Well, because again, I don't want to say that because I don't see the interviews on how all I'm saying is that.
Well, I'm picking up concern, right? I'm picking up concern.
Concern in the sense that no, I'm not really concerned because I know how good you are with this. I know how empathetic you are, and I think again the interaction you and I are having is very much like brainstorming, and brainstorming is not what you do when you talk to your people that you work with. So maybe it's not fair to you. I'm saying that if you were right now were trying to get me to, you would be challenging me in a different way. So I think what's making this not work for us right now is that you and I are trying to come up with a way that would work, and I'm trying to impose that this is how you work with Suzanne and Mickey, and what you're saying is that's not how I do it. So I think I don't have any concerns as far as your ability to get them to talk about what they do. What concerned me is that Mickey is still he hasn't found out. The question is this something you can do to get him to start narrowing it down on what exactly is that he does?
Oh no, because we don't, because we, like you say in your ABC,
you're not there yet.
His frame is not my frame.
Yeah, and he's not there yet.
He's not there yet. Well, I have started though. I asked him to make, and I hope he keeps it up, just do the 5-minute videos introducing himself, and I'm giving him questions. So in a sense, I'm laying the groundwork so the questions will come out of his questions about himself or his insights about himself comes out of the layers of the questions that I will be giving him.
Yeah, I think that what you just suggested is a good practice. See, if you notice, like in every video, I'm trying to establish my identity, and I
Yes.
always start by saying that, hey, I'm Jay Oza. I coach people win with their speeches, and
Right.
I kind of modify it a little bit here and there. But I think one of the practice that you may want, you may already suggested, seems like you already suggested to Mickey, is to record a 3-minute video talking about different aspect of his experience
Right.
and identify himself on what exactly does he do right up front. Hey, I'm Mickey so and so. Here's what I do, and let me talk
that's
about.
a great idea.
I'm Mickey. So ask him to record like some short 3-minute video saying, "Hi, I'm Mickey. I think his big thing was he wants to bring real life to people or something like that."
Right, real music.
Real music or real experiences to people, right? I bring real experience.
Right.
I bring real experiences through music, something like that, right? That's his introduction. That's his branding, let's say. And to tell him you have to keep working at it till you feel comfortable on what you are, and then talk about a specific experience that's related to what you just said. Like if you notice in my speech, I said, and you can even give my example, I said, you should watch Jay Oza's video that he's been telling me this is what he's trying to do. It's part of his practice that he tells people, I like to help people win with their speeches. And then he segues right into a particular public speaking topic that he wants to bring up to people. And that could be a good way for him to record it. And then he can eventually, as a practice, he'll be able to figure it out, right?
Right.
And that's something I think that's something I should recommend to you too. That when you start, say, I'm Julie Wu Finkelstein, right?
Yeah, I've been doing that. Do you hear?
I have to note it hasn't been repeating, so I have to see. I think you are doing it, but I'm not seeing any.
Maybe not every time.
Yeah. So every time you say I'm Julie Wu Finkelstein, I need to know who you are at that point. What do you do? Like I say I help people win with their speeches. I'm working with that. Until I come up with something better, I'm sticking to that.
I think you should be your title. I help people to be confident with their speeches.
Yes, I have to work on that. So that's what. All right. I think we spent a lot of time. Anything else before we wrap up?
No, I really want to appreciate you and thank you for. If I sound like a little bit frustrated, please forgive me because we're doing this together.
No, that's what it should sound like, because I'm challenging you, and you have to come back and tell me, hey, that advice is a piece of crap here. And how is that I'm not doing it? No, because what happens is that part of it is to because otherwise I don't think anybody's going to tell you this, because in this way I'm in a tell mode, because I'm not trying to. I'm trying to challenge you, right? So it's
okay,
different.
Great.
So I think part of it is, like you said, that you have different techniques to work with, and what my main point was that this is going to be a practice or something that you have to keep on tweaking here. Try this, try that, and see what works. And at some point, it will start clicking. All right, Julie.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. So are you going to write up those 5 key points for the interviews? So I can send it to the people who
the 5 things I had there was, like, first I wanted the person to kind of introduce themselves, because that's a key thing. They should be able to. I don't want to introduce people. They should introduce themselves so they can tell people how they want to be perceived, right?
Okay, that's 6 then. So the first thing is introduction. I thought the first question was, where are you in this public speaking journey? Because you want to know if they're beginning.
First, I always want them to introduce themselves, and then they can go into
introduction. Then the 2 is where you in your public speaking journey.
Yeah.
And then it's the pre-game, the game, the post-game.
Then it turns, then it segues into a specific speech that they're working on, if that's what it is, or if they've been giving speeches, then it can go in a different path. But the pre-game, game, and post-game is consistent, and what are some of the takeaways? What are the key lessons that they would like to impart on? They'd like to impart to others.
And then the last one is, do they have questions for us, or do they have suggestions for the audience?
Yeah, if there's anything that we forgot to ask, that is very important. Because we try to be as comprehensive, but occasionally there's always that one question they ask and they get to answer.
And then you say it's 30 minutes for the actual interview, and then 30 minutes post-mortem or something like that?
It depends. Make it conversational so it doesn't come across like there's a script. Let them talk, and you don't want to like if they're talking and if they're really interesting and all that, then let them talk. Like with Catherine, we just kind of let her talk, because sometimes what happens is that they're also thinking at the same time. So there are things that are coming up that they want to talk about.
Okay, so up to like an hour, right?
It's almost like you're giving them it's like a formal conversation you're having, where they get to, because I listen to some of these podcasts, and there's a lady named Krista Tippett, as her name is. She records it in a raw mode and an edited mode, and I always like listening to the raw mode, because that is really, you get the feel of what the conversation is like. It's almost like you're kind of listening into their conversation with she's a very good interviewer, by the way, for NPR. I'll send you a link one day to some of the interviews she does.
Great.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, Julie, thanks a lot for all your help.
Congratulations again.
All right, thanks. And I'll keep you updated on what's going on with my book, okay?
Great, thanks.
All right,
okay, bye.